Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Marche, the webinar director here at Advice Chaser. Before we introduce our guest and get started, I do need to do a little bit of legal housekeeping. Advice Chaser, the host of this webinar, is not a registered investment advisor. We cannot and do not give financial advice. Today's presentation is for educational purposes only and cannot be considered advice for any person's individual situation. Advice Chaser regularly hosts informative webinars, such as this one, featuring a variety of knowledgeable professionals, many of whom are licensed advisors. Any opinions, ideas, jokes, or principles expressed by presenters are their own, and however true, funny, or interesting are not endorsed by Advice Chaser. Please do not act on the information you hear today without consulting a qualified financial professional. We are thrilled to bring you today's educational presentation. Attendees are muted, but we do encourage you to ask questions using the chat box, and I will be monitoring those. The presenter is happy to answer queries during or after the webinar today as appropriate. And if you ask a question in the chat box and we don't have a chance to get to you, go ahead and leave your phone number as well. We will reach out to you after today's event to make sure your question is addressed. We want this experience to be as educational as possible. So once again, please don't hesitate to reach out for clarification or expansion of the material. That's what we're here for. Well, I'd love to introduce you to today's speaker. JR is a certified financial planning practitioner that utilizes a unique approach and a methodology called financial life planning. Life planning connects the dots between our financial realities and the lives we long to live. This method is based on the premise that advisors should first discover a client's most essential goals in life before formulating a financial plan, so a client's finances fully support those goals. As a lifelong learner, musician, and athlete, JR holds a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and trains Muay Thai and has been playing guitar for over 30 years. He also actively performs and writes music in his band. And JR, I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to you. And we're excited to talk about behind the scenes, get a little bit delve into behind the scenes of financial planning.
Great. Welcome, everyone. So very interesting topic. What we're going to talk about today in terms of the title, behind the scenes, and what happens behind the scenes is technology and software and tools that financial planners use to demonstrate, what it is people are really trying to accomplish. And everybody's really excited when I show these tools. Oh, can I retire one day? Or can I, do I have enough money to do the things that I want to do? And the software is very, very powerful. It's very helpful. It's intuitive. It can take the most advanced PhDs in engineering on a wonderful journey through math and science. And it can also provide you with really simple concepts and principles. But I don't think anyone really truly shows up to a financial planning meeting to go through software, even though they get excited about it. And what I really think is there's more to financial planning than math, and there's more to financial planning than money. As it says here, what do you really show up for? And it's definitely not to retire. I know that everybody's looking forward to that, or a lot of people are. There's more, to me, it's about your life and what you're trying to achieve in your life. And so what I tend to do is go in my methodology, as Marcia explained, it was what we call life planning, financial life planning. And what you really want to do is identify the things that you are trying to accomplish in your life. And then let's use these tools, software programs, numbers and math and science to fulfill on those life plans. And what I tend to not do is ask somebody right off the top, hey, what are your goals? Because most people kind of, when you ask them what their goals are, there are some exceptions where some people are like, I want to do this, this, and this. But most people kind of go blank. And so a really great method to getting people to share what their true life goals are is to ask them some really powerful questions. So if you can go to the next slide, these are questions that I often ask people. These questions are very powerful, very deep. They touch on a lot of different subjects. And as I talk, I want you guys to read through this. I'm just going to talk through them. I'm not going to read them out loud. Marcia even recommends that if you guys really want to dive into these questions, we did another presentation on them. But as you wanted to comment, Marcia?
Yeah, and what I'll do is those of you get a link to the replay. If you'll go to the website where the replay is after this event, we'll link also to that webinar that we've done that kind of explores planning for your financial future using goals and passions and using these type of really deep questions.
Yeah, so when I ask these questions, I get these powerful, powerful answers. And it's really inspiring. And people get excited about the boringness and the not so exciting aspect of financial planning, which is the number part. Right? I love that part because I'm weird, but most people don't really love that part of it. And so question one, the one to all the way to the left, is really just touching on, if I had all the money in the world, what would I spend that money on? Right, that right there gets you in that space of dreaming and imagining and having fun. That's a really important step in understanding, your financial plan and life plan. The one in the middle goes, well, if I ran out of time, what would be the things I would ran out of time in my life? Like, I'm running out of time. What are the things that I would look back on my life thinking about, go, wow, these are great things that I could get to work on now and immediately, right? What would I do first, second, or third? Sort of putting life in perspective. And the last question really touches on, as I look out into the future, I got my whole life in front of me. What have I missed out on so far? Who's the person I haven't gotten to be yet? And what are the things I haven't gotten to do? What's missing? And what's exciting about that question is you can get to work on it right now, right? Let's jump into it. And so, to me, one of the most important things of a financial plan is really establishing the life goals. So that's what these questions are about. And I go into much deeper conversation, like I said, in a different presentation. And I'm happy to answer questions at the end about these questions, but we're going to move on from here. Okay, so there's a lot of approaches to financial planning. There is no perfect approach. We kind of broke it down into two different sections, right? A traditional approach and a big picture sort of game board, 30,000 foot view approach, a visual approach. So the traditional approach is where we use software programs that a lot of people know about in my industry, right? They have these software programs that, there it is right there at the top, Money Guide Pro, eMoney, Right Capital, Naviplan. These things are very, they're traditional in the sense that a lot of us use them, and really powerful tools, So I'm going to go into that in a moment. And then I'm going to show you a different perspective as well, looking at from a different perspective. So I'm going to show you two different things, not because I think one is better than the other. It's just to show you that, there's all these different things out there that I can utilize. And, I get to choose the way in which I want to do my plan. So that's really the purpose of that. All right, so from here, I'm going to jump right into the traditional approach. So I believe I'm able to share now.
Yep.
All right, traditional approach. Can you see Brad and Abby? Okay.
Yeah. So
Brad and Abby are not real people. I use them for this presentation. So the information is not real, but it does really, this program does a really nice job of working on what I started the conversation with. If I hit this block, this drop down, do you see the word goals here? So the word goals is kind of what we touched on with those questions. I can start talking with people about what are the things they're trying to accomplish. So what you're seeing here on the screen, not visually attractive at all. We just see basic information. We got, if we had children, our expectations. So let's go to goals. One of the first things that people do want to talk about is, hey, I want to retire one day. So when is that day? So do you want to retire at 62? You want to retire at 70? You want to retire next week? We can kind of move this thing around to wherever we want. Okay, so we have a slider here and we can make it a judgment call when we want to retire. And then we'll make an assessment on how long we're going to live and if you're willing to retire later or not. So that's retirement and where we're going to move to, right? Some of us want to be snowbirds. Some of us want to stay in the freezing cold. I don't know why, but we can choose those accordingly, the states accordingly. All right, so here's the goal thing.
We just had a question.
Yeah.
Where would you figure out, how long? I mean, obviously no one knows how long they're going to live, but what's a good place to start on assuming?
Well, my program here, kind of see here, it says to see how long X suggests you should plan to live. So, are you a smoker or not? That's a big thing.
Okay, so there's some math to that. I see.
Yeah. How would you rate your current health? Good, poor, or excellent? If you compare tend to be like genetic, right? Like, so if you compare your family members to others, how long do they tend to live? Shorter than average, about average, longer than average. And then these programs, and then if you're male or female, and then you have these life expectancy tables and all kinds of math and science and statistics goes into that. And I mean, that's to me the way you would want to have that discussion. It's been like, there's a few people that it's funny when I do the planning for a lot of people, they're like, do not plan me out to 92 years old. Knock me off at 85. I don't want to be around that long. So I always find that funny. Okay. Like, no, let's get out of here at 85. 90 doesn't sound good. Okay. Update. Thank you. All right. Back to the presentation. So goals. So this is a really important step. Create your goals. Select your goals by dragging them into the box below and putting the appropriate section as a need, want, or wish. So these black and white pictures represent all the kinds of goals people can have for themselves in their lives, right? So if I have a travel goal, I simply pull the picture into the box and now I can create that goal. I just did that. But for the sake of time, I've already populated this to, like I said, for the sake of time. So everybody does want to retire. They want to know if they can eat, if they could go to the grocery store. We call that the basic living expense. I put a number in there, I just pulled that out of the air, right? Healthcare is not free in our society, unfortunately. We do have to set aside funds for that. So that's money for healthcare. If we're parents and we have a kid that we need to send to college, let's put that dollar amount in there. I want to buy a home one day or a second home. Here's the down payment. I want to travel. I want to set aside money every year for traveling. I got to pay for this kid's wedding one day. I need the sailboat and I better buy the significant other this beautiful diamond or they're going to get rid of me, right? And so we have put all these goals in and we attach dollars to those goals. From there, we have to have a discussion about this thing called Social Security. This is not a Social Security class. We can save that for another day, but an interesting nugget of information. This person, if they take Social Security at the age of 70, will receive $51,000 per year, every year for the rest of their life into the future. But if they take it at 62, no, you only get $28,000 every year moving forward for the rest of your life. And so what we can do is we can really analyze the best decision of when we take Social Security, later or earlier. And then the last thing that the program needs is how much money do you currently have? There's all kinds of things we can look at. We can look at, maybe do you have a pension? So that's in the other retirement. Maybe you're going to have a part-time job. That's in there. If I have an annuity, there's all kinds of things. If I have an investment property, right? So there's all kinds of things that I can have in there. But most people, if not complicated, will have 401ks, retirement accounts, Roth IRAs. We show currently what they currently have. And then we all talk about what they're adding every year into that account, all to answer the question, can I fund all of my goals without going broke, right? That's the magic. That's what it says up here. and we run a simulation. So I run 1,000 different outcomes to a person's financial situation. We call this a Monte Carlo simulation, very complicated math, and it's all statistical analysis and probability, all to give us this beautiful meter. This meter tells me my confidence zone. I have 11% probability of achieving all my goals without going broke. That's not good. Purple zone's no good. I need to be in this green zone. So the question is, how do I get there? Well, thankfully, the software does a lot of the legwork in a much faster amount of time than me sitting on a spreadsheet and doing all sorts of complicated math. Okay, so how do we get there? So I'm going to come over here down to the bottom left-hand corner, and here we have these solution buttons, if you will. I'm going to solve this thing with my super solve right here. And right now, in front of our eyes, the software is running the algorithms necessary to figure out what it needs to do. Even though the numbers are not real, I didn't tell the computer that computer doesn't know. So it's running the analysis. It does take a second because it is a cloud-based system. So just bear with me. And here we go. So we're in the green zone at 80%. So now we feel good. So what did the computer say to me? Computer said, you want to retire at 62, my friend? 5 years later, you have to retire at 67. You wanted to spend 100 grand a year in retirement? Don't do that. Decrease that by $10,000 a year to $95,000. And on top of that, all that fun stuff, you had to decrease that, some of it to zero, some of it by this much, and all that fun stuff you want to do, you can't really afford. And on top of that, just to make things worse, you got to save an extra $5,000 a year just to get this. And now the person wants to take my computer program and throw it in the ocean behind me, right? But there is a way to negotiate with the software. And the way in which you negotiate with the software is through this little button right here called the play zone. And the play zone is a fun way of saying, let's run scenarios. All right, different outcomes and different scenarios. So what you see here on the left are their goals. But now you got these sort of sliders here where I can start messing around with the goals that I set for myself. And so let's kind of play around a little bit. And as I move things around, let's do that. So one of the things is got to send that kid to school. So I can't negotiate with you on that, Jared. We got to keep that in there. And I don't care what you say, I'm traveling. That has to happen. Okay. And I'm definitely buying that sailboat. Don't care what you say. But I did talk to a financial planner and they did teach me how to save a few more bucks per year, right? We found some money, we got better on our budget. Oh, we have a different way of approaching investments. Maybe we get a higher return, maybe more aggressive portfolio because I can handle it because I'm in that age group. But you got to give up things to gain things. So I want those things that I'm willing to work, a little bit later in life. So let's do that. And as you can see here, as I start messing around with buttons and changing things around, I can get myself into that probability of success and still get all the things that I wanted, right? And so there we go, right? And so I didn't make too many crazy changes and everything is all lit up now. It's not all zeros and I've just achieved a financial plan. Let's put it in place. Let's get to work. Let's execute the strategy. Right now, there's way more things you can do. I mean, I could show you things on here that'll drive you crazy, like all sorts of analyses. I'll just pull one up just to show you that, yeah, this thing could get really intense.
We did have one question before you go into that. Can you, there was a question on retirement alone for Abby, I guess, the spouse.
Yep.
So would you run a scenario as if I don't remember the name of the other person that you're writing the scenario for, that person passed away, if that person passed away, does it run both scenarios? Is that what that also does?
Yeah, at the same time, right? So what they saw was correct, right? It said, well, what happens if this person dies a little bit early, or this person retires early, this person retires later? What happens and how much money? Let's assume that okay, well, I'm retired, he's not, and we don't need $5,000 a month to pay our bills. We only need $2,000 a month because he's still working, right? And now, so it runs all those scenarios, and anything you can think of is here, right? As you can see here, lots of graphs and numbers. I could show you how complicated this stuff can get. it will blow your mind. And like I said, the PhDs in engineering
Well,
can
for some
really,
people, they really want to see that.
yeah,
So
this is
that
like all this stuff here. Like we can get really detailed and
it helps for
calculate all
people
kinds.
to know like that this is backed by tables and math and things
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
And that's all here. I mean, and like all kinds of crazy things like 72T calculations, annuities, variable annuities, Roth, conversions, qualified distributions, charitable distributions, NUAs, future annuitization. I mean, there is nothing that you can't run in here. You know, what if I buy an investment property? What if I don't buy an investment property? What if I do a reverse mortgage? What if I don't do it? It's all there. It's all here. You can run anything you want. And yeah, so it's pretty intense and very powerful. 99% of the people that I deal with care less about all that stuff. Most people are like, hey, can I just achieve my life goals? That's what most people are looking for. But you know, like I said, there's 1% of PhDs, engineers, and mathematicians that are like, no, let's go into the details, and we do it, and it's fun. And I'm like that, but I get, remember, I'm weird. So so that's one traditional approach. And you know, we have you know, we have like a lot of, so anyway, so the point is that this is the one way of doing it and really powerful. All right, the next way is different. That's this thing. Okay, so what I want you to see here is one of the big problems that I've discovered in finance is there's a couple. One, people kind of feel disorganized about their money, right? That's why they go to a financial planner. And the reason why they feel disorganized is the way they think about their money, because money is sitting inside the worst thing in the world, your head, right? Money is not meant to be shuffled around in this brain of ours. It's too complicated. And so what's so fascinating about human beings is we're very visual, right? We like to see things in front of us. It helps us get organized. And so when you have your 401k in your head, your bank account in your head, and all the debts you got to pay off in your head, it's just jumbled up. And so let's take it out of the head and place it on the screen in front of us. So that's what this program does. And so what you see here, and I'll walk you through it. So this is, there's our people again. And now we have a section of their income. So we now know how much money they are making, see how old they are, and then how much they are currently saving, right? What is the percent of their income is being saved? 7. Now, in another presentation, I recommend that people save 15%. We could say that for another presentation. All right, so, but now I've just identified visually, oh, there's a problem here. Let's work on that problem. Debt. So we have mortgages, credit cards, student loans, right? And our rates of return, how much it's costing us, and the unpaid balances. Top right. Now, if you can see here, this little purple section, I have protection. So these are financial products that I utilize in my life to protect myself from unforeseen events, right? Car insurance comes to mind, property insurance, disability insurance, medical insurance, life insurance. There's wills and trusts. This whole group of products right here represent the protection products of my life. This orange section right here represents sort of like my checking and savings accounts, the things that don't tend to really grow, but they're very safe. So you see checking, savings, credit union, savings bonds, CDs, and money market accounts. They all sit in here. And then now we have our tax-free. For those people who don't know what tax-free represents, like the Roth IRA is a good one, or an HSA. Tax-deductible type accounts are your 401k plans. And then we have bonds, stocks, real estate, personal property of significant value, the businesses that I own, the values that they are. This blue area here in the growth area represents the products we tend to invest in over long periods of time that generate large returns for us over time. So what I'm showing you here is now we're not so goal-based in this. It's like, okay, here's the snapshot of my life. Now, Jared, what should I do to maximize my wealth over time? How do I save the most, pay off my debts in the most strategic way possible, protect myself in the most strategic and efficient way possible, have the proper amount of money in a bank, and then invest accordingly. And what we do here is sort of run, again, it's the concept of simulation. So I'm going to go to another screen, same information, right? I'm going to load this information. Okay, and now what you see here is on the left, it's the amount of money going into the different products. Like this is my checking account, doesn't earn anything, but this is my retirement account, earns 7%. This one earns 5%. This one earns 6%. My real estate earns 2% per year on average, right? We make these assumptions. And as I keep adding money in, money ends up out, right? So today at age 41, I have $656,000, right? If you add up all my assets, and every year I keep adding and adding and adding and adding to my stuff, and you can see the wealth that I have starts growing and growing and growing until I get to age 67. I got $3 million. All right. And so what we've just run is the simulation of my life moving forward, assuming everything just keeps going the way it goes. But that's not what people want to know about the way it's currently going. They want people like me to go, hey, if I have the same contributions, is there a way for me to not end up with $3.3 million of wealth in the future? Can I end up with 3.5 or 4? Like, how do I maximize my wealth potential with the same inputs going in? And that's what this tool is. And then we deal with, these red numbers represent the taxes we have to pay and the fees that we have to pay. And how do we make them lower? We want to avoid fees and taxes as much as possible and maximize our returns. So visually, what I like about this tool is it gives me more of a visual perspective on the outcomes of my wealth, maximizing wealth, versus this one's more of a goal-based system. And so there's all different kinds of systems. This is not a class to go through every program that's out there. It's to give you an introduction to understand this is what happens behind the scenes. These financial people look at these tools, make assessments of my current situation, and help me get to the main point of all of this, the main goal, which is back to what it says in those 3 questions. What am I trying to do in my life? What things would I be doing in my life that make me excited and happy? And what are the things I haven't done yet that I really want to get to work on? That's, to me, what financial planning behind the scenes is all about. And now I would say I'm done. And if you want to ask some questions, I think that would be great.
All right. Well, we did have a question here. Can you talk a little bit about balanced mutual funds? One of our attendees was asking about balanced mutual funds and if the program handles that.
Yes, absolutely. So what the question is when we get into the specifics of these investment accounts, okay, they tend to be allocated in all kinds of ways, right? So if I go into this and I have an account, what she said was my Roth, let's say a mutual fund, let's say it was a Roth, all right, is in a balanced fund. So a balanced fund is derived of or made up of a balance of bonds, a balance of stocks, and typically they're kind of evened out, right? They're balanced among short-term, intermediate-term, long-term bonds, and balance between value and growth and mid-cap and small stocks. And so, yes, what happens is inside of this program, there is an assumption based on how an account is allocated of what the return will be in that account over periods of time. And so these software programs are very conservative in, do you see here, disclosures and glossary historical projected. What this means is, what is so they get these really smart people to come in and go, okay, what do we think these types of accounts are going to do over long periods of time? They take a very, very conservative approach. Like, they're not going to say that a balanced account is going to make 15%, even though this year they did. Now, they're going to be at like 6 or 7%, 5%, 7%, that kind of thing. I think that's what your question is. And that's how these software programs handle it. And what these programs will do as we get further and further into the weeds, if you will, we have these risk scores that we have in terms of our investment allocations, what we think an appropriate portfolio allocation. It's like a balance would be like a 50% stock bond. This is a 60, that's kind of a balanced portfolio. And then what it'll do is it says, here's your current allocation between stocks and bonds, and then what the recommended or model we would recommend you turn into, right? So you're currently here, but we think you should be here in terms of allocation. That's how you answer that question. And then the software will run the analysis and say, if you turn into a more appropriate portfolio, what will be the outcome of you achieving your goals with the more appropriate portfolio? And that might tell you that you need to save more money in a more appropriate portfolio. It might tell you you don't have to save as much money because it's aggressive enough to get you where you need to go. Yeah.
And I would just ask that attendee, if that answered your question, let us know. If we need to clarify some more, let us know while we're going through some more questions here. Another question someone had is that when you do financial planning, and let's say, for example, you had a major life event and your plan is totally changed because the numbers in your life have changed. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh my God, it's so funny. Marcia and I just spoke about that before the call. So what's so fascinating about financial planning is I'm going to give you a plan based on all these assumptions and everything that we did and everything we talked about. And the next day, the financial plan is incorrect because all the assumptions were just assumptions and they never work out to the penny that we thought they were going to. So financial planning is not one and done. It is that's why you essentially, when you're meeting with a planner, your thought process is, I'm going to be with this person for 10, 20 years. So you better like them, right? Because they're going to give you good advice. And it's a moving target, as they say, right? It's not a perfect target. And so every day you have to assess these changes all the time. Yeah, life events are going to happen. You're going to get bonuses. You're going to change careers. You might be out of a job for a month. I mean, there's so many variables, but you have to constantly be in full communication with your financial planner, update them on the new changes, and then run these analyses again all the time. Listen, you're going to set a goal in your life, like, oh, I want to travel every year. And then you get there and you're like, I don't want to travel this year, or I want to double the price of that travel. Like, could you imagine trying to predict where you're going to go in 15 years? I can't even predict where I'm going to go next week. It's like, so these tools are powerful, but you have to constantly be really adjusting and changing and being in communication with your planner, and you're literally changing your financial plan every day, literally.
I have a really great question here. How do financial planners or advisors typically charge? I've heard it's a percentage of investments they're managing for you, but if they're not managing investments, but just going over general strategy, is that more of a flat rate? So if maybe you could address, I know we got to give general answers because every advisor is different.
Every advisor is different. I'm going to go, 30,000-foot view. There are 3 different ways financial planners get paid, or financial professionals. Let's just use that word for a second, right? Planners and professionals, they really do a great job in my industry confusing everybody. They're very proud of that. So here's what I'd like to say. So to meet with someone who's a financial professional and just put together a strategy, a plan, help you execute it, that doesn't require you, let's just put it like this. Typically what they'll do is they'll charge you a fee for that, okay? And so how do they derive that fee? Well, based on the amount of time and work and energy that needs to go into this, right? So,
and I know that the investment in these software programs is a significant investment as well that financial advisors have to pay for these subscriptions.
The financial professionals pay for the subscriptions, correct? Right, exactly right. Yes. So yeah, most people are not going to sign up for one of these. It wouldn't make any sense. It would not be cost effective for an individual to do that. So the planners do pay for these software programs. And so you come to them and go, okay, put a plan together for me. Let's use software and all these things. So they can either charge you a flat rate, like a one-time fee, right? It could be anything. I mean, you could Google the range, for a plan, they'll charge you anything from like $500 to $10,000, depending on how complicated and how much money the financial planner is responsible for, and how much time they're going to put into it. So flat rate, You could pay hourly, like the way you would show up to a lawyer, right? Or you could go on like a retainer. A retainer would be kind of like, you're going to pay me, once every year or two, and I'm going to meet you this many times. And it's just like over and over and over again. So hourly, flat fee, retainer concept. This is for the creation of a plan and helping you execute the plan and so that's that basic principle, right? That's choice number one. Let's throw that to the side for a second. And now we're in choice number two. Choice number two is sort of the old fashioned way, very, very popular. A lot of people, when they have money for their future and growing it, they tend to invest it. Right? It's obvious, right? And so we invested in the stock market, the bond market, whatever, gold, silver, whatever markets you want to refer to. Typically, the person doesn't have the time, expertise, talent, or they just don't want to be bothered with managing that responsibility. So they take that responsibility to give it to someone a financial professional that helps manage the investments over time. So in that world, what they do is they charge a fee, again, like we just talked about before, but now it's not you writing the check out of your checkbook, it's you paying a fee based on the amount of money that's invested. And it's a very small amount relative to what we think you're going to generate over long periods of time. So if on average, you're going to earn 7 to 10, I'm just making numbers up, 7 to 10% per year, they'll charge you 1%. And so if you thought you were going to make 10% that year, you made 9, but you gave them that 1%. And for that 1% fee, they're going to give you all the things we talked about in part one, choice number one, right? The plan, putting it all together. Typically, that's how they do it. So the fee covers the cost of managing the assets and all the ancillary things like putting a plan together, helping you execute it. So that's the second way, very common. Third way, not a financial planning concept. It's more you show up as a client, as a customer going, hey, I'm knocking on your door, Mr. Financial Planner, and I need this thing that someone told me I needed to get. And so can you help me facilitate me getting it? And if you do, I'm not paying you, Mr. Financial Planner. I'm paying an institution. You connected me to that institution, and that institution is going to pay you. We call that commissions. Typically, commissions end up in the world of like things like insurance products, right? People like, oh, I just had this baby. I need life insurance, and a financial professional will facilitate you getting life insurance. You don't pay the financial professional, you pay the insurance company, but the insurance company paid the financial professional. And on top of that, you get a bunch of financial advice and planning strategies along with it. And so happens with annuities a lot, and that's typically how those work. So 3 different ways. They've come up with all different dynamic, crazy, well thought out ways of charging people in my industry. They make it very confusing. Just when you sit down with someone, spend the time to understand their process of how they charge. And that's my advice. And that's how you answer that question. There's a lot of different ways.
Thank you. I know that's a complicated answer, but it is one of the, they said super
Yay,
helpful.
we got a helpful.
That's very, very good. Thank you so much. Another question that we have here is, what about financial planning for children? You know, when you have kids and you're planning for other expenses other than college, let's say you have other goals, is that something that can be incorporated into a plan?
Absolutely. Like I said, the tools can handle, really intense, complicated situations, complicated health situations, all kinds of things. Absolutely. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the role of a financial planner as far as educating their client?
Yes. That's it. Is that the question?
Yeah.
That's really important. So see, I can only talk from my perspective. And so this is a little bit just from the way I see things. The way I see things is, before you tell somebody to do something, you have to teach them how these things work. I tend to not like the approach of, okay, I just got an assessment of who you are and how much money you have. Do this, do this, do this, do this. And when you do that, as a planner, the person it's it's not comfortable. It's just not comfortable. You have to go through an educational process. For the people who've never done financial planning before, I put them on like a once a week regimen of sitting with me for an hour, once a week. And it could take us a month. It could take us 6 months. It could take us 3 months, but it's all knowledge. I'm just going to sit with you and do a class, right? Here's what a Roth IRA is. Here's how it works. Here's what a retirement plan is. Here's how it works. Here's an insurance policy. Here's how it works. Education, education, education. Now, I'm not going to make you a genius and I'm not going to make you a PhD in finance like me, right? You just need to have some basic understandings so that when I do finally say, okay, if I were you, and I'm trying to achieve these goals, I would put money here, put money here, put money here, put money here. You go, got it. I'm putting it there because, oh, I'll save taxes in the future if I do that. Got it. I'll put money here because I'm going to spend less money on fees if I do it this way than if I do it that way. And so step one is education. Step two is create the plan. Step three, implement strategies. So yeah, totally on board with the educational aspect. First step of the process.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about the types of kind of like the types of a typical situation that people would come went to a financial planner? Do they have to have, a certain number of assets? Do they have to have a 401k? Like where should people start?
Yes. So I would suggest my feeling is you can start at zero and some people start at negative. so you don't have to have millions of dollars to get great advice. There are ways in which you can meet with a financial professional and say, I need help, and they will apply an appropriate business relationship and fee structure so that you can afford it, even though you're in the negative. Right? Who's in the negative? Everybody coming out of college is in the negative, right? They start off with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, and they're like, well, I got this job making 50, 60,000, and I'm 100,000. I mean, you're negative. And you still get the financial plan, the strategies that somebody who's, a multimillionaire would get as well. You really do. And you got to find the right planner. Some planners don't swim in that pool, if you will, but some do. And so, yeah, you're not entitled. You don't have to you can be completely negative. I've seen some of the worst situations ever. You go like, whoa, that's pretty bad. And I pulled them out of it. Right. And a lot of planners have similar stories.
What if you have had a financial planner in the past, but you're not really, getting very much education, they're just managing the money that you get the phone call every year. So
yeah,
I feel like that sometimes happens to a lot of folks.
I agree. I think it's a problem in our industry. So yes. So there's two things of looking at that. Number one, the person that you're working with has established a way of doing business such that that's the service you're going to get. That's one situation. Step number two is you're just not asking for it. Remember, they don't know what you're suffering through unless you tell them or unless they ask, right? And so if they're not doing it and you like the person, guess what you got to do? Get on the phone and tell them, here's what I need. And if they say, I'll do it, great, they'll do it. If they say, I'll do it, but I got to charge you for it, well, that's their way of doing business, and you got to be prepared for that. And then, of course, there's thousands of us across the country. You could throw a piece of paper out the window and hit somebody that's a financial advisor. So there's no there's no shortage of financial planners. There's a shortage of good ones, great ones, but there's no shortage of financial professionals. There's a lot out there. And we're getting into, well, how do I pick a planner? You got to understand that how they get compensated. You have to understand their perspective. I often say that when I start working with someone, this is just my situation. And so we're going to be on the phone 3 or 4 times before we decide to work together, right? We're going to spend a couple hours to get to know one another. I'm going to get to know you, and you're going to get to know me, and then you're going to learn about my process before you have to worry about putting money on the table, right? And so that's a really nice, I think that's a fair way of getting to know one another, seeing, you got to show something that you're going to do for them as a professional, right? And then yeah, that's the basic idea. I mean, I've had people show up with like a list of questions that they ask me. That's great. And there's all kinds of things you can do to really, you just got to ask a lot of questions. So
It sounds like it really is just a professional relationship, like it would be with your family lawyer or tax professional or someone else that you really trust will stay with you throughout your financial life.
yeah, I tell people like when you're talking to me, I want you to understand that like my mindset in working with you is we're in this forever. Like this is it. And so I want you around forever. So think about that as we talk, right? And listen. When I do a presentation for someone, with one of the first few times I meet them, I say to them, not only are you going to get a little like an education on money, you're also going to get an idea of how I think about it. And so if you like the way I think about the financial planning process, well, then you know that we should go to the next step. But if you're listening to me, you're like, I don't like the way this person thinks about money. It's not, if it doesn't sound right, move on to the next one. And like I said, there's plenty of them.
Well, that maybe goes into our last slide here, and then we're going to go ahead and end afterwards. I would just say before we address this, if there are any more questions, go ahead and leave those in the chat. And if we haven't had a chance to get to them, I will save those chat questions and we'll reach out to you afterwards. So JR, why don't you go ahead and take us out here?
With this last slide, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, what the slide says is there's a lot of ways, and there's no perfect way to get to what you're trying to achieve. Like I said before, a coach, a trainer told me that the day after you finish a financial plan, it's incorrect. So keep that in mind when you're doing your planning. Is that it's a work in progress. We're always adjusting. We're always changing things. It's not one and done. I would be minimum speaking with your financial professional. I'd say 3 to 6 months. If things are boring, every 3 to 6 months, quick check-in. Doesn't take. It could be a 15-minute phone call. It could be a big planning event. There's a lot of ways to do it. There's a lot of personality styles, and one of the things I want people to understand is be careful of the internet. The internet provides us with some valuable information, but it also provides us with information that's being paid for by someone else for their well-being. It's not that sometimes the information is bad, it's just not the entire story. So financial planning is done with one-on-one, in my opinion, it's done one-on-one with a professional, a guide, a coach, a teacher, a mentor. And to me, that's where you get the most value. However, you can do this yourself. There's been thousands of books written on the subject. They're very valuable. I've read many of them. And so you can do it yourself. You can, absolutely.
Well, and I would say here at Advice Chaser, we're of the opinion that a financial advisor is definitely worth the time and effort. Not a lot of people have the time and effort, and have the ability to do it on their own. So that's why this industry exists.
Yeah, of course.
Well, on behalf of Advice Chaser, I do want to thank you for being here, JR. I want to thank the organizations that have made this webinar possible today. Thank you to our attendees for attending. Look for an email soon with a link to the replay of this event, and you're welcome to share that replay with friends or family or colleagues. Here at Advice Chaser, we're all about helping you find a financial advisor who's a great fit for your life and your financial questions. Our matching service is free to you, and every one of our advisor partners has committed to offer a free initial consultation to anyone we introduce them to. Find out more by going to advicechaser.com and click on the link that is Find an Advisor. Once again, from Advice Chaser, thank you so much for coming, and hopefully we will see you at another webinar very soon. Goodbye, everyone.